Okay, so perhaps the Mad Cat controller needs a little bit of more practice time here, but I've done this jump plenty of times before. There we go. Okay, to hell with this and back to Neon. Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am Many Ninjas, and this is now my 9th installment of the Double Dragon Neon playthrough on Double Dragon difficulty, otherwise known as the hardest difficulty. Due to the length of this particular mission, we're gonna skip the diatribe and go straight to the action. The 10th and final stage for the game would be Skullmageddon's Neon Fortress. The Neon Fortress stage acts as the final exam point for this particular title, as you're going to be facing every type of enemy now, along with an extra one that will be popping up very shortly, along with each and every possible gimmick and trap that has come along so far in the game. On top of that, the enemies that will be showing up on this particular stage are all in their elite formats, so you'll have the high-end Williams, Lindas, and Abobos appearing, along with everything else that has popped up to this point. And of course, now we have the new enemy for the stage, Bayoboshi, which, along with the occult theme that appeared in the previous stage, generally doesn't fit in with the rest of the realm and everything that popped up in previous Double Dragon titles. And what makes this particular fellow very annoying is, as you can see from the amount of beating that I had to give him, he has a lot of general armor before he can be hit into a stun state. Of course, this also happens to be Double Dragon difficulty. This also means you will have an obscene amount of health to go along with the whole package. Which is unfortunate for Billy here, because quite frankly he actually had enough health as it was beforehand. Now with the first Bayoboshi dispatched, the game feels free to toss in some additional enemies in order to help him, but quite frankly it won't do too much extra help in this particular case, because the Williams were kind enough to bring a baseball bat with him that tends to soften up basically anything the game will throw at you. So this particular assortment of enemies will be dealt with very shortly. Of course, I have to have a little fun bouncing the Williams off the wall there. Now, I think while I'm kind of messing around here, it's worth mentioning of Bayoboshi, if you're attempting to dodge the lightning attack, you actually have to begin your dodge roll rather early, otherwise it will still actually hit you if you're in the first few frames. As a side note, the Lindas in this particular stage will be carrying a lot of grenades with them, as well as the bases that will be popping up, being kind of intermittently filled with either helpful items, in this case quite a few ones can be gotten from the bases, or as you just saw there'll be a bunch of grenades hidden in there that will pretty much nail unsuspecting players on this difficulty an obscene amount of damage. Moving on to the next part, we have this nice little silhouette section that they like to throw in every few stages. But the general complement of enemies isn't too difficult at this point. You'll be seeing a few Williamses throwing on there, a few Lindas for good measure, and I believe one Abobo off the top of my head. At this point, since you could borrow the nice little wooden plank with a nail from the previous section, anything they happen to throw here is fairly manageable. This is still early enough in this age where even if you have the accidental slip like what just happened there, you can still get along pretty well. For the most part in this particular segment, you'll be fine as long as you don't let yourself get surrounded by enemies. While you do have an option of using something like Magic Gammon in order to spam your special move in order to get out of a situation should it arise, realistically the Magic Gammon honestly doesn't do nearly as much damage as you'd like at this point, so you probably will be having to use a lot of it just to kind of get along, or be beating on the opponent for a rather lengthy amount of time. And just remember, if you're beating on them for a long amount of time, that gives them a lot more chance to counterattack, and they quite frankly hit harder than you at this point. Moving on to the next section, the game reminds you that yes, we still remember that we have the assorted traps going around here, with these nice little ceiling cranes that will be... ceiling cranes or claws? I'm not sure what at this point, but they basically will be making a good amount of appearances within the remainder of this title. Once you run past this relatively and thankfully very short trap section, now you have the next wave of enemies to deal with. Unfortunately, they make things a little easier by giving you that nice little spring section in order to send unsuspecting opponents flying, as well as the fact that the hole on the side can be used in the conventional sense. If you happen to dizzy an enemy, well, close enough to it that you can just toss them off of it. Unfortunately, at this point, I'm pretty sure, even though I might not be using Magic Gambit at this point, I'm pretty sure I actually have Powered Gambit equipped. I still have it leveled high enough that I can still abuse the special attacks quite a bit, which is good because due to the long distance range of several of the enemies, you kind of need it in order to avoid what would be substantial damage at this point. Probably a good thing that we happen to have that pit over there, because quite frankly, dealing with the bow as well as the shun that showed up here would be really tedious under normal circumstances otherwise. And that was a very lucky wall bounce, although, as will appear in a minute, there is no actual wall that I should have been able to bounce off of. Unfortunately, in that case, I still took too much damage and died there. And my, that rising uppercut still does quite a bit of damage. Unfortunately, this seems to be the last section of, or the last wave for this particular area, and we'll be moving on to the next part, which will be more trap traversing very shortly. There we go. Now that shuns down, let us continue. I'm going to give a little help to start off with, which is good because I happen to run straight into a missile. Now, as you can probably see, this is where the game is going to get a little annoying with its trap setup here. As you're attempting to progress forward, you have to either jump or roll underneath the missiles as they're coming along, as well as dodge all the cranes that will be going along the way. Which I am not doing too good of a job of right now. Why, yes, I'm doing very badly with the dodging at this point. But once you get past that last section, and you see the doorway, the missiles will actually stop, and you'll be able to progress normally. Moving on to, I believe, the fourth section of this very long stage at this point. We're back to a 3D segment, which in this case the game is provides you your choice of weapon, a wooden plank or a sword. If you remember to beat up that little weapons post there, excuse me, it's taking a quick little breather here, but it's a good thing to give you some weapons to work with because now they toss in this annoying little series of traps from the previous stage. As you can probably guess, if you walk into those things, you'll be taking a lot of damage. But fortunately, this will also apply to any enemies that you happen to have that also do the same thing. And it's very thankful because the Roxy AI is very, very stupid. She will basically kill herself 90% of the time by flying into the spike traps herself. So it's just a matter of navigating her towards the nice little spiked rollers, and they'll just take care of themselves from there. It's not exactly the fastest way to get rid of the enemy, but at this point with how much damage it can potentially do, it's a fairly safe version, which is always very much appreciated. And thankfully the extra damage there, oh, I just took a very bad hit there from the gun. And as I was about to say, the damage also applies fairly well to the bow over there, who due to the very slow movement are also quite susceptible into either walking into the spiked rollers or being knocked back into them if you happen to have good enough timing or at least really good position. And with that enemy down, now we move on to the next doorway. In this case, they provide us two bases here. The bottom one drops off some health reboot. And, oh, I forgot that one actually dropped off a 1-up too, so they're quite generous in giving you items to help replenish the your general stocks here, since you've probably taken quite a beating up to this point. Now we've returned to a nice little 2D section here. Very little room in order to work with here, but the quote-unquote elite Williams here is fairly easy to deal with once you get rid of his gun. Oh, now to think about it, that's pretty much how they dealt with enemies for the most part in this entire game. The minute you get rid of the weapon they happen to be carrying, which gives them a little bonus armor when being hit during certain animations, they just go back to being their regular, easily to dispose of selves for most of the earlier type of enemies. Now, in this particular section, you'll notice the little arrow that's going on there. I momentarily forget it as I'm going through here, but the arrow points down to the last of the hidden shops within the game, which is actually a really curious place to keep a shop in the middle of the enemy's fortress, which if you were to talk with the shopkeep here, he would be pointing out several times over. And of course, if you, as you just saw there, if you happen to remember to check this route, it's a free 1-up in there for you. So pretty much at this point, just a little breather here, trying to fill in a few more of the tapes as I'm going along here. But I'm going to tell you straight out, I'm going to be maxing out on the amount of lives I happen to have here, because while the last boss of the game, just to kind of get this out of the way, I'm going to say the last boss is actually fairly easy to get along through. The second last boss is the one that I've always found kind of a kicker, which you'll see for reasons that will become apparent once I actually get to that boss fight. Maxed out on lives, filled up the health as well as the power a bit more. Buying a few more tapes. I'm going to obviously have to pay a visit back to the tapesmith to finish maxing out the limit on a few different stances as well as special moves, but that'll be for another day. Okay, buying a few more stunners still. It's unfortunate that the way this particular shop setup is arranged, you can't kind of decide to elect how many you want to pick up at once, which would make it a much faster process. Instead, you have to purchase each and every one individually as you go along. Now with that madness done, the game is saving the content, and in a second I'll be leading into the very next section. Just taking a quick moment before I move into that section just to check exactly what I've got maxed out and what I need to visit the tapesmith for later on. Okay, knee drop, lightning, 1-inch punch, yeah. Okay, things that I honestly don't get much use of, so yeah, that explains why I haven't maxed them out at this point. Alright, well, they would have given me some free health to begin with, but okay, that's not that bad. Don't mind spending a little extra cash on there. And now we have the next end. I believe this is probably the second last wave of enemies off the top of my head before we really get to the boss section. I'm gonna vow just to be annoying, but it's still not too bad. Okay, now 2 of them now, this is going to be a little more tedious, but at least the robots are fairly easy to dispose of in a quick hurry. And I had still enough power, even using the power gamut, to help knock them out around a bit. This is also one of the lesser reasons why we're picking up all those 1-ups. While normally on other difficulty levels, these two honestly aren't too hard at this point. It's just on Double Dragon difficulty with the amount of added health these two got in general. This makes this particular section of the stage really tedious to get through. Especially since they can use the projectile there and the lightning of their own in order to deal with a lot of damage in a hurry. And with the armor there, you have a harder time of knocking them into their own stun states. In hindsight, if I probably had equipped a stunner at this point, which I think I have at a pretty high level on this particular playthrough, I would have probably been doing a bit better with keeping them at bay, but hindsight is 20/20 and all that. Right, and I believe this particular enemy is just about done, which means it's time to cue the Smurf Bowl here. Pretty much, I believe this is a callback to the original Double Dragon title where they had some really interesting color choices for the Bobos, although off the top of my head in that one it was more of a green color, although they probably did have a blue one, I just don't remember. Might have been during the cave section? Unfortunately for me, regardless of the color of the Bobo, or if he hits you, it will hurt quite a bit, so there goes 1 more life. Once he's kind of cornered here, he's pretty much under control for the most part, as long as I remember to dodge things accordingly. Alright, and down goes that Bobo, which leads us to this nice little hallway full of vases here. And the trick here is most of the vases will actually be filled with grenades, although you'll find a few extra items in there, like that nice little 1-up there. And I believe the bottom rows hiding a health power-up, as well as maybe 1 more 1-up. The trick is, though, you want to keep the grenades on screen, while of course staying safe enough in the distance that you don't actually get hit by it. Okay, it wasn't a health item, but the power-up item never hurts, and the extra 1-up was there as I expected. Now we're moving on to, I believe, the second last section of the stage before the actual boss fights really begin. You have the area here divided into a few different platforms, which the enemies will be pretty much falling on different sides of. Unfortunately, in this case, both versions of the Williamses have a gun at this point, so the trick is to get rid of one side. And I get some gold star. What I didn't do there very well is get the other Williams to drop his gun. I'm pretty sure you actually hit them with an object well enough, you can actually cause them to drop the weapon in advance. But at least, early enough, you can still knock them into the pits fairly easy. And now, just to do at least one more time to irritate the hell out of everyone involved, they decide to throw in a few more Roxys to go along here. Although at this point, under normal difficulties, the Roxys wouldn't be too much of a problem. Here, it's just because of the amount of damage they do with all their diving attacks. Not to mention, you're also trying to keep from accidentally jumping into the pits, which will do an equally amount of obscene damage as you're going along there. This is really beginning to eat into some of the lives I've been carrying over. I really thought I would have fallen into the pit at that point. Definitely not. Right now, they give you a little breather wave with the explosive robots here, whose names I something like Buzzkill or something. I can't even remember what the names are anymore. For the most part, all you really know are they're easy cannon fodder as long as you remember that you can throw them at any point. Alright, one more William with a gun, two more Roxys just to irritate the hell out of everyone involved. I really would have wished the Williams had fallen in the hole at that point, so I could just worry about the Roxys. Okay, thank you, Williams, for the assist there. Williams has decided to dispose of himself this time around with his ill-fated cartwheel there. Got one more Roxy to go, and then he'll give me, I believe, to the last section of enemies. Oh, come on, that really should have hit you more than that. There we go. Alright, and the last wave of enemies will involve a handful of Itsumis, as well as two Bobos. In this case, rather than really risk moving around the stage too much to get the Itsumis, I'm just waiting them out in order to get to my platform so I can dispose of them at my leisure. And I'll be probably using, once they drop it, their fans in order to take a few cheap hits over at the Bobos. Unfortunately, right now the game is not wanting to cooperate with my strategy at this moment. While I'm waiting for the Itsumis to cooperate a bit more with my particular strategy here, pretty much my general opinion of the game as a whole is it's a very fun experience. WayForward did a really good job of taking the original Double Dragon and kind of doing a playful take on it that still kept a pretty good idea of how the old school beat 'em up worked, but with, of course, its kind of cheesy 80s flair to go along with it. And I really hope that they actually come around and at a later point introduce a sequel to this particular title. Speaking of things that I'd like to see a sequel for, another Shantae wouldn't hurt either. Well, drat. That didn't work exactly as I wanted, but okay, hey, the shove actually turned out to be useful for something for a change. Note to self, I need to see in a later run if I can use the shove in order to get rid of a few different enemies that way. Because if it does work, that would make this way easier. Alright, now we're on to the last, what I believe is the last segment before the actual boss fight itself. Game decides to give one more one-up to go along with, one into the base. And we're going to have the bonus piece actually show up a few different times and immediately do the shot down there. And the bonus beast will be pretty much if you're trying to build up some cash as well as a few other odds and ends, this would be a good place to do it. Actually, now to think about it as a whole, as long as you've really gotten a handle on how the stage works, Mission 10 is actually a really good place in order to build up a bit of cash as well as a bit of mithril, due to the fact that once you defeat both bosses, both of them actually drop mithril at this point. And they give you one last chance to get a free little chest here. It doesn't give you anything particularly special depending on which one you open, it's just a random assortment there. I believe at this point they'll be tossing in a few grenades at this point, just to see if they can catch you unawares one last time. It's a fun idea, but there's nothing a nice little back roll can't fix. Or front roll, either or. And with that last one out of the way, now we approach the boss section, which will bring us to the next bout with Skullmageddon.
You got nowhere to run, Skullmageddon. Now where's Marion?
Oh, where are my manners? I haven't introduced you to the new and improved Marion. I call her Evil Marion.
I'm bad.
You evil jerk! You're going down!
Silence, Peanut.
Evil Marion? Really? Okay, folks, we've gone full Skeletor here. As you can see, Billy's girlfriend has been gotten a bit of a wardrobe change and will quite frankly be one of the most infuriating parts of this particular boss stage. As for changes going along with Skullmageddon here, he gets an extra little boosted attack from Evil Marion. He proceeds to still do that, do his little taunt there every now and then. And his hat throw attack, depending if it's powered up, actually can draw the opponent into the vortex and will do an obscene amount of damage at this point. Also, as I probably noticed earlier, his face-off now shoots 2 skulls instead of 1. For the most part, Skullmageddon is still fairly easy to go along with, as long as you make sure to dodge fairly out of the attacks there. The most problematic part of this boss fight will actually be the things that Evil Marion will be throwing your way. As you can probably imagine, and see what's going on there, you step into those burning sections of the stages, and you will be taking perpetual damage during the whole period. Since he really does love to do it a lot. During this section here, if you forget to hit Marion during the whole time, she will eventually finish charging up a devastating full-screen attack that will kill you automatically. And of course, she's perpetually pelting you with small fireballs the whole way if she isn't doing one of the other attacks. Now, what makes this particularly annoying is, at this point, okay, she's doing the area of damage again. And I have to kind of hang around very close to where the vortex is at that point. Otherwise, I'd be caught in the vortex, but you go away too far, and you're taking damage all the time, and the area damage will kill you. So that's really irritating. And a lot of the one-ups that I had purchased up to this point are vanishing in a nice hurry on this particular boss fight alone. This is what I really wanted all those one-ups for. Right now we have that fun little vortex bit again. But I'm not sure if I showed it in the earlier videos, but there actually is some interesting concept art on what the design for Evil Marion will be. You have this very Skullmageddon themed one that ended up being the final design, along with some designs which are closer to the original design, but with either a shorter haircut or kind of a punkish appearance. Not too far different away from what the actual regular enemies had, but nothing. 1 second, just doing a little just switching to the magic gamut in order to spam the spin kick a bit more here. But as I was about to say, nothing quite as stripperific as the Linda's designs, though. Honestly, for this particular boss fight, you're really best off working the dodges at this point and using the gleam time in order to spam attacks like the spin kick in order to get as much damage done as possible. Because the faster this particular boss fight goes, the better off you're going to be. I am really getting sick of that area damage at this point. Although it didn't work out too well there, if you're using the spin kick or anything else that kind of has a special there that gives you some invulnerability frames, you won't take any damage at that point. Of course, when you return back to normal state, you're back to taking full damage, which at this difficulty is quite a bit. Alright, this one's a bit tricky. If you walk a little too close to the fire, you'll actually get knocked back for damage, but of course you need to hit him there. Is starting to flash particularly quickly at this point. He's just about done, which is good because this fight has really been dragging on at this point. Probably gonna have to go back to check with this, but I'm pretty sure even with the need to dodge here, this particular boss fight was probably still will be shorter than the boss fight with Marion 2 back in the lab. And of course it involves more attention because, quite frankly, he's come again. He can do a lot of damage here, especially with Marion's help. And the rematch also goes to Billy.
This is pointless. I am a master of space and time. Follow me if you dare.
Oh, believe me, I dare. I double dragon dare.
I'm finally free! Ugh, you don't want to know what I've just been through.
But he's gone now.
I'll use the power of love to send you after him.
Wait, wasn't the power of the love the name of the sword in Scott Pilgrim?
Oh, and, I'm pretty sure human bodies can't survive this transition, so,
What?
it'll be fine. Just go!
See you next time, folks, where we deal with Skullmageddon for the last time.